Combat sports have been around for a very long time. Cave paintings depicting wrestling moves were found in France and are believed to be more than 15,000 years old. The ancient Egyptians were practicing combat sports as early as 3400 BC. Scandinavian wrestling was practiced as early as 4,000 years ago during the Viking Age. Wrestling in England dates back to 1829 BC. Wrestling during the Greek Olympics dates back to 708 BC. Pankration, a combination of wrestling and boxing, essentially an ancient version of no-holds-barred fighting, became part of the Greek Olympics in 648 BC. When the Roman Empire conquered Greece around 2 BC, it merged the Greek and Roman styles of wrestling to become the original version of Greco-Roman wrestling. Later, the French would start the modern-day version of Greco-Roman wrestling. The Japanese have been practicing sumo since at least 23 BC, Japanese Jiu-Jitsu since the 1600s, and Judo since 1850. Catch-as-catch-can wrestling used to be practiced by coal miners and steelworkers in the north of England. Men who traveled the world, like those in the British Army and Navy, started to pick up all kinds of different fighting techniques and brought them back to England. That's how wrestlers in the Lancashire region of England found a hybrid grappling style that was believed to be able to beat all different combat styles. Catch wrestling incorporated influences from various different grappling styles, including several styles of wrestling from England, mainly Lancashire-style wrestling, which was a merger of English folk catch wrestling and wrestling styles from continental Europe, Irish collar and elbow wrestling, Japanese jiu-jitsu and judo, Greco-Roman wrestling, Iranian palavani, and Indian pelwani. By the end of the 19th century, catch wrestling has made its way to North America, and German-born American catch wrestler Ed Santel eventually taught the art of catch wrestling to Lou Thesz, one of the most legendary American wrestlers, who was one of the main opponents of the father of Pro-Res, Korean-Japanese former sumotori Rikidozan. One of Santel's most famous feuds during his wrestling career took place from the mid-1910s till the early 1920s, when he essentially practiced a form of proto-mixed martial arts more than 7 decades before the term MMA was coined. As the catch wrestler feuded with the Japanese judo dojo called Kodokan and battled several judoka. Catch wrestling was an important grappling style, essentially since it had an influence on various combat sports one way or another, including freestyle amateur wrestling, professional wrestling, Russian sambo, Brazilian luta libre, Brazilian jiu-jitsu, and mixed martial arts. English catch wrestler Billy Riley founded a gym in Wigan, England. One of the main wrestlers who trained at Billy Riley's gym to become a catch wrestler was Karl Gotch, a Belgian-born German amateur wrestler who had competed at the 1948 Olympics as an amateur, became a pro wrestler in the 1950s, invented the German suplex, started wrestling in Rikidozan's Japan Pro Wrestling Alliance, JWA, in 1961, became known as Pro-Res no Kami-sama, God of Pro Wrestling, in Japan, and was one of the main trainers of several legendary Japanese wrestlers in Japan. This includes Antonio Inoki, who would end up founding New Japan Pro Wrestling and challenging several martial artists from different disciplines, Tatsumi Fujinami, who would end up essentially being the first junior heavyweight star in New Japan, Satoru Sayama, who would end up being a junior heavyweight pioneer in New Japan, then would end up being one of the main performers in the original Japanese UWF, and would end up founding Shuto, Yoshiaki Fujiwara, who would end up co-founding PWFG after training Masakatsu Funaki and Minoru Suzuki, Akira Maeda, who ended up founding newborn UWF in 1988 and Rings in 1991, Masakatsu Funaki, who helped train Ken Shamrock and then ended up co-founding Pancrase, and Minoru Suzuki, who was a great shoot-style wrestler in the early 1990s and ended up co-founding Pancrase. It was Karl Gotch who called Billy Riley's gym the Snake Pit, and the name stuck. Other than Gotch, there were several other notable wrestlers who trained at the Snake Pit, and one of them was Billy Chambers, also known as Jack Fallon, who's notable because he ended up becoming one of the trainers of the Dynamite Kid Tom Billington. The Dynamite Kid briefly wrestled at the Snake Pit, but the Kid's original trainer, Ted Betley, felt they were beating the Kid up too much over there and sent him to Fallon's gym, where the Kid learned some catch wrestling. Let's talk about Billy Robinson. William Alfred Robinson was born on September 18, 1938, in Manchester, England. He came from a family of fighters. His great-great-grandfather, Harry Robinson, was a bare-knuckle boxing champion. His father, Harry Robinson Jr., was a street fighter turned boxer, and his uncle, Alf Robinson, was a boxer and pro wrestler. And it was Alf who was the one who invited Karl Gotch to come to Wigan and discover catch wrestling. It was also Alf who suggested to Billy that he should become a professional wrestler. Billy's dad, Harry Jr., recommended that 15-year-old Billy should learn catch wrestling at the Snake Pit. Billy ended up coming back to the Snake Pit for years to keep learning the combat sport he referred to as physical chess, catch wrestling. Billy Robinson was taught by Billy Riley not only how to wrestle, but also how to learn and how to keep an open mind to different angles and possibilities. Billy Robinson made his professional wrestling debut in 1958. In 1968, Robinson started touring Japan, and he wrestled for International Wrestling Enterprise, IWE, where he became one of the first Gaijin babyface superstars. After meeting Calgary wrestler Dave Rule in Japan, Robinson was booked for a tour in Stu Hart's Stampede Wrestling League in Western Canada, and this was Robinson's first tour in North America. In Stampede, Robinson unexpectedly won the North American Championship after Archie Goldie walked out during the match. Soon after, Robinson challenged Dory Funk Jr. for the National Wrestling Alliance World Heavyweight title in a series of 1-hour matches. The NWA World Heavyweight title was at the time considered by many the most prestigious pro wrestling title in the world. After wrestling in Stampede Wrestling for a bit, Robinson went to wrestle in Hawaii, which is where he met Verne Gagne, who happened to be there on a workation when Robinson was there. And Gagne ended up booking Robinson for Gagne's American Wrestling Association in Minnesota. Robinson became a headliner in the AWA and a teacher for wrestlers getting their careers started in the AWA, such as Kurt Hennig, Ricky Steamboat, Ric Flair, Sergeant Slaughter, Iron Sheik, Jim Brunzell, Buddy Rose, and Ken Patera. In the AWA, one of Robinson's main opponents was Nick Bockwinkel. Billy Robinson always took his role seriously, and his role was that of a wrestler with a reputation of being one of the best technical wrestlers. He was also very proud of his catch wrestling roots. When he grabbed a hold, he grabbed it in an intense manner, and he wouldn't just faint-heartedly do things. One of the things that made Robinson stand out so much was the marriage of shoot style with tumbling style wrestling. Due to Robinson doing such a great job getting over the struggle, he was able to get away with incorporating some of the more theatrical bumps and athletic sequences into his matches. It appears that Robinson always tried to stay true to himself, no matter where he was or who his opponent was. Yet he was still able to adapt to different styles and environments. Also, keep in mind that in those days, wrestlers didn't worry about star ratings and there was no internet. So it appears it was more important for someone like Robinson to simply be the best they could be, and that's why he was respected by many wrestlers, fans, and promoters. Robinson was certainly the sort of wrestler that everyone in the arena and locker room took notice of. Everyone had an opinion of Robinson. In some leagues, many of his peers didn't like him because he didn't take it easy on people. In the AWA, however, Robinson wasn't disliked because Gagne wasn't scared to work with him, as Gagne respected Robinson for his technical ability. The British Lion is not only famous for his wrestling, but also for his training. Billy Robinson helped train some top-level English pro wrestlers in England, most notably Johnny Saint and Marty Jones. In Japan, Robinson was a coach for Japanese leagues IWE and UWF-I. He ended up being one of the trainers for Japanese wrestlers and fighters like Kiyoshi Tamura, Kazushi Sakuraba, Shigeo Miyato, and Manabu Inoue. Also, Robinson used to attend pancrase shows to watch some of the people he helped train. There have also been female wrestlers who were influenced by Robinson. Meiko Satomura and Megumi Fuji got the chance to get some advice from Robinson. In 2011, American MMA fighter turned pro wrestler Shayna Baszler attended training sessions with Robinson to improve her skills. Because of her fascination for catch wrestling, Baszler wants to help remind pro wrestlers that it's supposed to be a fight. Baszler was even once quoted saying in an interview, "I don't think Billy would be really happy with me as the representative of catch wrestling if I did a moonsault. I'm not saying I don't like it, but I have a style to uphold." Billy Robinson passed away on March 3rd, 2014 at the age of 75. Robinson didn't have a gimmick. He was simply a great wrestler who stayed true to his catch roots. He was more realistic than many of the other pro wrestlers in the 70s and 80s, and you could say he was also more realistic than most wrestlers today. Robinson approached his matches in a way that put over the idea that he was trying to beat his opponent, as opposed to some of the goofy nonsense many other wrestlers have been doing over the past several decades. Robinson was influential in the Japanese shoot wrestling scene and the MMA scene through his wrestling career and coaching career. Pro wrestling and MMA have common roots, and Billy Robinson is the embodiment of that fact. My overall conclusion of Billy Robinson's career is as follows. There's unfortunately no footage available of the first 12 years of his career. From 1970 through 1973, he was very good. He was in his mid-30s by then. There isn't much footage available from this era, but his work appeared to be of very good quality. In 1974 and 1975, he was excellent. There are at least a couple of excellent matches available from this part of his career, and Robinson really comes across as one of the best in the world in that footage. From 1976 through 1980, he was great. During these years, he wrestled some of the very best matches of the time, most notably his matches against Jumbo Tsuruta. In 1981, he was excellent. He started to slow down a bit as he was in his mid-40s by then, but he was still able to provide excellent quality work. From 1982 through 1984, he was very good. His career was clearly winding down, but his ability and knowledge was still good enough for his work to be of interest. In 1985, he was good. It was the last year he wrestled in All Japan Pro Wrestling. He had some matches elsewhere after 1985, but his career after 1985 wasn't that memorable. Billy Robinson was one of the last great catch wrestlers, the best pro wrestler of his generation, arguably the best British heavyweight wrestler of all time, and one of the top 25 or top 30 greatest men's pro wrestlers ever. By watching his matches from Japan, you could tell that Robinson was a decade or two ahead of most pro wrestlers when it came to his catch-like and basically proto-MMA approach to his matches. For example, like in his December 11, 1975 match against proto-MMA pioneer Antonio Inoki. Robinson's best feud was his feud against Jumbo Tsuruta, and these two great wrestlers had more than 20 singles matches against each other between 1976 and 1984. March 1977 was a particularly amazing month for pro wrestling, as Robinson vs. Tsuruta produced 3 memorable matches in 1 month. including two of the best matches of the 70s, on March 5th, 1977 and March 11th, 1977. Here is a list of Billy Robinson's 10 best matches.